All right, so get this. The Gulf of Mexico
Uh-huh.
is now the Gulf of America,
Really?
at least according to U.S. government databases and Google
Oh,
Maps.
yeah.
You think you know your world map, right?
Yeah.
And then something like this pops up and you're like,
What?
what is going
Yeah,
on
what is going on?
here?
That's wild. It's not like the Gulf itself, like, physically changed or anything.
Yeah.
It's how we're seeing it. Like,
Right.
how it's being shown through, like, technology that's
Yeah.
causing all this, like, buzz.
Yeah, and we've got a Forbes article that really dives into, like,
Oh, great.
cultural reaction. And then we even have a
Nice.
blog post straight from Google
Wow.
explaining the change. But
That's good.
it goes beyond just a name on a map,
It does. It really
Yeah.
does.
doesn't it?
Like, it makes you think about, like, how we even experience reality now
Yeah.
in this digital age.
Totally.
Where just, like, one little update
Right.
can make people feel like their world is, like,
I know.
shifting.
Okay, so let's break down what actually happened.
Okay.
What led to this Gulf of America thing?
Well, it all started on January 20th, 2025,
Okay.
when Donald Trump signed that executive order
Right.
to rename the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow.
He even went so far as to declare February 9th
Oh, wow.
Gulf of America Day.
Interesting.
So that's what really triggered the official U.S. databases
Right.
to change the name.
Gotcha. So Google Maps always trying to be like,
Right.
with it.
Yeah.
Just followed suit.
Exactly. They basically said that this change just, like, aligns with their whole thing
Uh-huh.
of reflecting local naming conventions.
I see.
But here's where it gets
Okay.
really interesting. Google Maps actually shows different names
What?
depending on where you are.
No way.
So U.S. users,
Yeah.
they see Gulf of America.
Oh, okay.
Mexican users
Yeah.
see Gulf of Mexico. And,
Right.
like, everyone else
Yeah.
gets to see both.
So we had a body of water
I know.
that's supposed to connect these countries is now like causing a digital divide.
A digital divide.
It's like the name itself is creating a border.
It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It shows how these digital spaces
Yeah.
can, like, reflect and sometimes even, like, magnify
Uh-huh.
these real-world tensions.
It's not just about geography anymore.
No, it's not.
It's about,
How technology shapes
yeah,
our perception of
our
it.
perception of the world.
Yeah.
And the Forbes article really digs into that,
Yeah.
saying that the reactions go way beyond
Oh, yeah.
just politics.
Sure.
They're saying it's about the
Right.
growing role of like technology
Yeah.
in our lives.
Our lives, yeah.
And how it's influencing the way we
Uh-huh.
see things. There's this quote,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was really good.
What is it?
They said, fundamentally changing the name doesn't really impact people
Uh-huh.
on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Yet the reaction on social media is clearly impacting people viscerally.
Interesting. That is the question, isn't it?
I know.
It really points to something fundamental about, like, human nature.
Like
Research shows that, like, people just don't like change.
Yeah.
Especially when it involves things that are, like, familiar,
Uh-huh.
you know?
It's like when your favorite app
Exactly.
gets redesigned
Ugh.
and it's like
I hate that.
everything's different. And
Just so frustrating.
I know. And you're like,
Right.
this is terrible. Why did they do this?
It's the worst.
But we've had places change names before.
That's true.
Like Sri Lanka used to be Ceylon
Right.
and Iran was Persia.
Uh-huh.
So what makes this different?
I think a big part of it is that it's happening
Okay.
in the digital age, you know?
Yeah,
Think about how fast information spreads now.
that's true.
Back when Iran changed its name in 1935,
Okay.
news traveled so much slower.
Right.
There wasn't this, like, immediate global outcry fueled by
Right.
social media.
So social media is acting like an amplifier, turning what might have been a minor blip
Exactly.
into like this major talking point.
Yeah, and it's more than just amplifying. It's, like, shaping the whole experience of how we're, like, interpreting and reacting to the change.
Gotcha.
And this is where this idea of hyperreality comes in.
Hyperreality.
Hyperreality, yeah. Have you heard of this?
I'm intrigued. Break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine, like, you're scrolling through Google Maps, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at those satellite images, the 3D models, maybe even street
Right.
view photos.
Yeah.
It creates this feeling that you, like, know the place.
Uh-huh.
Even if you've never actually, like, been there,
Right.
you've experienced it
Digitally.
digitally.
So you're saying that our understanding of places is becoming more and more shaped by
Exactly.
these digital representations.
Yes, and those representations, especially now,
Yeah.
with all the technology we have,
Right.
can feel so real.
Yeah.
It's starting to blur the line between what's actually physically there
Uh-huh.
and how we perceive it.
Gotcha.
That's hyperreality.
So hyperreality.
When those digital experiences start to feel as real or even more real
Wow.
than the physical world.
Okay, so in a way, Google Maps renaming the Gulf, it's like they're redrawing our mental maps without even asking.
They're redrawing our mental maps.
And that feeling of something familiar being changed
Yeah.
without our consent,
Yeah.
that's what's causing this like
Exactly.
huge reaction.
So the loss of control over something we thought was like
Right.
stable and unchanging.
Yeah, we think of places as like fixed points on a map,
Yeah.
but in the digital realm.
Yeah, they're just changeable with a few lines of code.
Which is kind of unsettling
Yeah.
because like maps are supposed to guide us,
They are.
to give us a sense of place.
Right.
They represent order
Exactly.
and stability.
They do.
And so when that order is disrupted, even in a way that seems minor,
Uh-huh.
it can trigger this like,
It's sense of unease.
yeah, like the ground is shifting beneath our feet.
This makes me think about the whole
Yeah.
debate around fake news
Oh, yeah.
and misinformation.
Uh-huh.
Like if we're already
Yeah.
struggling to distinguish between like
Right.
the digital and the physical,
Exactly.
how can we even be sure
Well,
what's true anymore?
That's the question.
Right.
It's a huge question.
That is a huge question.
As the lines between like representation and reality are blurred,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
becomes harder and harder to figure out
Yeah.
what's real and what's
This is genuine
fake, what's genuine.
and what's manipulated.
Yeah, it leaves us more vulnerable to having our perceptions
Totally.
molded by these forces we might not even be aware of.
Okay, so that is a sobering thought.
It is.
So what can we do about it? Are we just stuck in this
Right.
digital current constantly questioning what's real?
I don't think we're stuck.
Yeah, yeah.
I think awareness is the first step.
By recognizing that these digital platforms have this power to shape our perceptions, we can start to be more critical of the information we're consuming online.
Okay, so being more critical of the information online.
Yes. And you know what's so interesting about this whole thing is that, like, for a lot of people, their main experience of the Gulf of Mexico or America, whatever you want to call it, is through maps, documentaries, maybe some vacation photos they see online. They haven't necessarily been there themselves.
Right, so their understanding of the place is mostly
Exactly.
shaped by these digital representations.
Shaped by digital representations, and those representations are becoming more and more like immersive,
Right.
persuasive. You know,
Yeah.
think about it like high definition satellite imagery, 3D models, all that user generated content.
Right.
It all like contributes to this feeling that we know these places,
Ah.
even if we've never set foot there.
So it's like we're building these mental maps based on digital information.
Yes.
And then those maps start to feel
Okay.
just as real, maybe even more real than the actual physical places.
More real. That's the heart of hyperreality.
And as those digital representations become more and more sophisticated,
Right.
they have more power to shape our thoughts,
Yeah.
our feelings,
Totally.
even our actions.
Our actions, yeah.
So when Google Maps changes the name of the Gulf,
Uh-huh.
it's like they're redrawing our mental maps without asking.
They're totally redrawing our mental maps, and that's why people are reacting so strongly, you know?
Yeah, it's this loss of control over something we thought was
Mhm.
constant and fixed.
Yeah.
We think of these geographical features as
Yeah.
permanent, but in the digital world,
Permanent, right. But in the digital world, they're as changeable as a line of code.
it makes you wonder what other aspects of our understanding of the world are being shaped by technology without us even
Right.
realizing it. I mean, maps are supposed to be reliable guides,
Mm-hmm.
giving us this sense of place
Uh-huh.
and direction.
They represent this order, this predictability. And when that order is disrupted, even in a way that seems minor,
Yeah,
it can trigger anxiety,
it's an ease.
this unease. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? The ground is shifting beneath my feet.
This makes me think about the whole issue of fake news
Totally.
and misinformation.
Right.
Like,
Right.
if we're already having trouble separating the digital from the physical,
Right.
how are we supposed to know what's true
I know.
and what's not online?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The line between representation and reality is not only becoming more blurred,
Right.
it's becoming increasingly difficult to even identify.
And that makes us so much more
I know.
susceptible to manipulation, to having our perceptions shaped by algorithms
Totally.
or hidden agendas.
It's scary.
Okay, that is a pretty scary thought.
It is.
So what can we do about it? Are we just doomed to be swept along by this digital tide, never knowing what's real and what's not?
I don't think we're doomed. I
Yeah.
think it's about awareness. Recognizing that these digital platforms have this power to influence how we see the world. That's the first step.
So fact check everything.
Yeah.
Be skeptical of online sources.
That's a great start.
Approach the whole digital world with a healthy dose of doubt.
Yeah, and we also need to cultivate a sense of what's called digital literacy.
Digital literacy.
Oh,
Okay, what is that?
Yeah, it's about understanding how these systems work,
Okay.
how algorithms filter and present information to us.
So it's like media literacy
Exactly.
for the internet age.
We need to be able to decode the language of the internet,
Right.
to see the biases built into search engines and social media feeds, and even those seemingly objective map applications.
So how do we develop this digital literacy? Are there...
There are a lot of great resources out there.
Oh.
Websites, organizations, even educational programs dedicated to promoting digital literacy.
Okay.
But one of the simplest and most effective strategies is diversifying your sources of information.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one search engine or one social media platform for everything.
It's like getting a second opinion from a doctor.
Yeah,
You don't want to rely on just one source of information,
exactly.
especially when it comes to something as important as your health, or in this case,
Right.
your understanding of the world.
Your understanding of the world exactly. By comparing and contrasting different sources, you can start to identify biases, recognize patterns, and draw your own more informed conclusions.
So it's about taking a more active role
Yes,
in choosing what information
exactly.
we consume online.
We can't just passively absorb whatever's fed to us.
Right. We need to be conscious consumers
Yes.
of digital information.
Conscious consumers of digital information, just like we're becoming more conscious consumers of food or energy.
This makes me think about the role of education in all of this.
Uh-huh.
Shouldn't digital literacy be a fundamental skill, just like writing and arithmetic?
It absolutely should be. It's not just about knowing how to use the latest gadgets
Right.
or apps. It's about understanding the systems that shape our online experiences.
It's about being a critical thinker
Yes.
in a digital world.
In a digital world.
So maybe this whole Gulf of America situation is a wake-up call, a sign that we need to equip ourselves, and especially future generations,
I agree.
with the tools to navigate
Yes.
this complex digital landscape.
I think that's a really valuable takeaway from this whole discussion.
Yeah.
It's not about rejecting technology
Right.
altogether. It's about engaging with it in a thoughtful
Right.
and critical way.
This conversation has definitely given me a lot to think about. I'm looking at my phone, at Google Maps, at everything online with a new perspective.
And that shift in perspective is the first step towards becoming more informed and empowered digital citizens.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It's been fun.
We'll be right back after a short break to explore some practical tips and resources to help you boost your own digital literacy and navigate this increasingly complex world with confidence. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So we've been talking about this Gulf of America situation, and honestly, it's kind of a wake-up call. I realize I haven't been thinking critically enough about how much I rely on the digital world.
Yeah, it's easy to take technology for granted, right? To get
Right.
so caught up in the convenience and the speed of it all
Right.
without really thinking about the deeper implications. But as we've seen,
Yeah.
those implications can be pretty huge,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to shaping our perception of reality.
Before the break, we were discussing the importance of digital literacy.
Yes.
It feels like such a big concept, though.
It does.
Where do we even begin to, develop that?
I think it starts with understanding that it's not about becoming a tech expert or learning to code or anything like that.
Oh.
It's more about developing a critical eye
Right.
and a set of skills that help you engage with information online thoughtfully and effectively.
So it's like those critical thinking skills we learn in school,
Exactly.
but applied to the online world, learning to evaluate different sources and arguments.
You need to be able to recognize that not all information is created equal
Right.
and that there are often hidden agendas or biases at play.
So don't just read a headline or watch a video without considering who's behind it and what their motivations might be.
Exactly. And this applies to everything you see online.
Okay.
From news articles and social media posts to even the information presented on a platform like Google Maps.
Speaking of Google Maps, earlier we talked about diversifying our sources of information. Are there other mapping apps that you would recommend using
Oh, yeah.
to get a more well-rounded view?
There are alternatives like Apple Maps, Waze, even open source mapping projects like OpenStreetMap.
Okay.
Each platform has its own way of presenting information, its
Yeah.
own strengths and weaknesses.
So by using multiple mapping apps, we can kind of start to see things from different perspectives
Exact.
rather than just accepting one version as the absolute truth.
And this principle applies to all types of digital information.
Okay.
Read news from a variety of sources,
Yep.
follow diverse voices on social media,
Uh-huh.
and most importantly, be willing to challenge your own assumptions
Your own assumption.
and preconceptions.
It's like that old saying, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Right.
But maybe a more modern version would be, don't rely on just one source for your understanding of the internet.
I love that.
And another crucial aspect of digital literacy is understanding how algorithms work.
Algorithms.
Yes, I mean those things that control what pops up in our social media feeds
Uh-huh.
and in our search results.
Yes. Algorithms are basically sets of rules that determine how information is filtered and presented to us online.
Okay.
And they can have a huge impact on what we see, what we believe, and even how we behave.
It's a little unsettling to think about these invisible forces
Yes.
shaping our online experience. It feels like we're not entirely in control.
That's why understanding how they work is so important.
Okay.
It allows you to recognize their limitations and their potential biases.
Okay.
For example, social media algorithms are designed to keep us engaged.
Right.
So they often prioritize content that triggers strong emotions,
Ah,
even if that content isn't necessarily accurate
right.
or reliable.
So those attention-grabbing headlines and viral videos
Exactly.
might not always be giving us the full story.
They might not be.
The same goes for search engine algorithms, I imagine.
Totally.
They're designed to show us the most relevant results, but that relevance
You're right.
is often filtered through our own browsing history,
Exactly.
our location, our demographics.
It's like our search results are tailored to us,
Right?
which can create this kind of echo chamber
Yeah.
where we're only exposed to information that reinforces what we already believe.
Which is kind of dangerous
It can be.
if we're not careful.
It's one of the reasons why it's so crucial to actively seek out diverse perspectives
Okay.
and challenge our own assumptions.
So this is really eye-opening. It seems like digital literacy is about so much more than just avoiding fake news.
It is.
It's about developing this deeper understanding of how information is produced, shared, and interpreted in the digital age.
Exactly. It's about becoming a critical and informed participant
Okay.
in this crazy digital world.
So where can our listeners go to learn more about digital literacy?
Well, there are lots of great resources available online organizations like the National Association for Media Literacy Education
Yep.
and Common Sense Media. They offer tons of information and educational materials.
And I bet there are some fantastic podcasts out there too.
I'm sure there are.
But seriously, we'll make sure to include links to some of these resources in the show notes
Awesome.
for this episode.
Perfect.
You can also check out your local library or community center, many of which offer workshops or classes on digital literacy.
They do.
So the key takeaway here is that becoming digitally literate isn't about memorizing facts or technical jargon.
No.
It's about cultivating a critical mindset
Mm-hmm.
and a set of habits that help you navigate the online world with confidence and discernment.
Well said. It's about being an active and engaged participant,
Right.
not just a passive consumer of
Exactly.
digital information.
And that's a really powerful message, especially in light of this whole Gulf of America situation.
Totally.
It reminds us that we have choices to make about how we perceive and understand the world,
We do.
even in the face of these powerful technological forces.
It's a call to be more mindful, more critical, and more empowered in how we interact with the digital world.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. We hope this conversation has given you a fresh perspective and encouraged you to take a more active role in shaping your own digital experience.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.